Amari's Okon stood in front of the mirror, her hands slightly trembling as the wedding bells echoed in the distance. It was the day everyone had been waiting for. Her marriage to Tebena Nwoko, the most admired couple in town. The hall was filled with laughter, luxury, and love. Every detail sparkled. The flowers, the decor, the guests dressed in elegance. Amari smiled, unaware that her perfect day was about to take an unexpected turn. Just as the ceremony was about to begin, the doors swung open, and a hush fell over the crowd. All eyes turned to see Zuri, Amari's cousin, once her closest friend, walking in confidently, wearing the exact same wedding gown. Murmurs spread like wildfire. Cameras flashed. Guests gasped in disbelief. Amari's heart dropped. She could barely breathe as whispers filled the air. The groom, Tebena, looked from one woman to the other, his face unreadable. The moment froze in silence. Amari's felt a sting of betrayal so deep that her hands went cold. Why would Zuri do this? The joy she once felt turned into confusion and hurt. She wanted to run, but Tebena raised his hand gently, asking everyone to stay calm. His voice was firm but emotional as he said he had something to reveal. The room fell silent again. Tebena took a deep breath and began to explain that Zuri had approached him days before the wedding, threatening to expose lies if he didn't cancel the ceremony. The crowd murmured in shock, struggling to process his words. Then he pulled out his phone and played a video showing Zuri admitting her plan. Legal documents followed, proving she had tried to steal Amari's late father's company by forging ownership papers. The guests turned to Zuri, who suddenly looked pale and speechless. Her confidence crumbled. Tears filled her eyes as shame replaced pride. She tried to speak, but no one wanted to listen anymore. Amari's pain turned into strength as she stood tall beside her groom. Tebena then smiled softly and announced one final surprise. He and Amari's had secretly bought a new home together, one registered completely in her name. The hall erupted in applause. The woman who walked in to destroy Amari's happiness ended up exposed, while Amari stood victorious, her dignity shining brighter than ever. The wedding hall was filled with joy and excitement when suddenly, the doors opened, and everyone turned to look. Amari's froze as she saw her cousin Zuri walking in, smiling proudly, wearing the exact same wedding dress she had on. The crowd gasped. People whispered in disbelief. Cameras flashed everywhere, capturing the shocking moment. Zuri's confident walk made it clear she had planned this entrance. Amari's heart raced. Her smile faded as her mind filled with confusion. Zuri had been her childhood best friend, like a sister. Yet now she stood there stealing her moment. Guests began murmuring, unsure if it was a joke or a mistake. The resemblance of the gowns was perfect. Same design, same fabric, even the same veil. Amari's couldn't understand how Zuri found out about her dress. Only her designer and close family had seen it. The tension in the room grew heavier. Amari's felt her chest tighten as everyone's eyes darted between the two women. Her mother covered her mouth in shock while friends tried to comfort her quietly. Tebena, the groom, stood frozen at the altar trying to understand what was happening. His expression was serious, hiding something deeper. He didn't say a word, and his silence made everything worse. Amari's looked at him, desperate for support, but his eyes revealed confusion too. The once perfect day now felt like a nightmare unfolding in front of everyone. Zuri smiled faintly, pretending innocence, but her eyes held something sharp, a quiet satisfaction. Amari's knew that look too well. The same look Zuri gave when she wanted to win. For a moment, Amari's felt weak, humiliated in front of hundreds of people, but deep down, she sensed there was a reason behind Zuri's dramatic appearance. Something was not right. The music stopped, the whispers grew louder, and photographers surrounded them, eager to capture the scandal. Amari's heart ached, but she stood firm, holding back her tears. She refused to let Zuri ruin her day, without knowing why she had done this. Somewhere inside, she believed the shocking scene was more than jealousy. It was a plan, a secret waiting to be exposed. And while the guests gossiped and the hall buzzed with chaos, Amari's story was just beginning. Guests gasped loudly as soon as they saw the shocking scene. Two brides standing side by side in the same gown. The music stopped, and silence filled the air. Cameras flashed non-stop as everyone tried to capture the unbelievable moment. The wedding that was supposed to be a celebration suddenly turned into chaos. People whispered, some covering their mouths, others shaking their heads in disbelief. The priest didn't know what to do, and the bridesmaids stood frozen, holding their flowers tightly. The air felt heavy, like a storm had entered the hall. Amorai's heart pounded in her chest. She could feel hundreds of eyes on her, watching every move. Her dream day, the one she had imagined since she was a child, was turning into a public spectacle. Her cousin Zuri stood confidently, pretending not to notice the tension, but the smirk on her face told a different story. She was enjoying the attention, standing tall like she belonged there. Amorais could barely breathe as her emotions battled between pain, anger, and disbelief. The groom, Tabena, stayed still at the altar, his face serious. He didn't speak a word, and that silence only made the crowd more curious. The guests began whispering questions. Who was the real bride? Was it planned? Was there another secret? The once joyous hall was now filled with gossip and confusion. Amorais looked at her parents. Her mother's eyes were filled with tears. Her father clenched his fists in anger. The photographers kept snapping pictures, and social media was already buzzing as people posted the moment online. The beautiful decorations, the shining lights, and the elegant guests all faded into the background. The spotlight was now on the scandal. Amorais wanted to disappear, but something inside her stopped her from running away. She lifted her chin, trying to hold on to her dignity despite the humiliation. Zuri finally stepped closer, pretending to be calm, but Amorais could see the satisfaction in her eyes. The ceremony couldn't continue. The priest quietly stepped aside, waiting for instructions. The tension was unbearable, and everyone waited for someone to speak. Amorais' perfect wedding had come to a halt, and in that silence she realized the truth. This wasn't just embarrassment. It was the beginning of something much bigger, a secret waiting to come out. Tabena stood at the altar frozen, his eyes moving slowly between Amorais and Zuri. The whole room waited for him to speak, but not a single word came out. His silence was louder than any scream. Guests watched, confused and restless, whispering to each other, wondering what was going on. Amorais felt her knees weaken as her groom stared at them both, his face calm but unreadable. She couldn't tell if he was angry, shocked, or hiding something. That cold silence made her heart ache even more than words could. Zuri stood with her chin raised, pretending to look innocent, but everyone could sense there was something wrong. Tabena's expression stayed the same, calm, serious, distant, as if he was thinking deeply. Amorais wanted him to say something, to defend her, to stop the humiliation, but he just stood there, his hands clasped tightly. It wasn't the reaction of a confused man. It was the reaction of someone who knew more than anyone else in the room. The hall buzzed with tension. Some guests began murmuring that maybe Zuri was telling the truth about something they didn't know. Others whispered that Tabena might have a secret relationship with her. Amorais' heart sank as doubts filled her mind. She looked at Tabena, searching his face for answers, but he didn't meet her eyes. Instead, he looked at Zuri with an expression she couldn't understand. Part pain, part anger, part disappointment. The cameras kept flashing, capturing every silent second. The priest stepped back quietly, unsure what to do. Amorais felt tears forming but refused to let them fall. Her mind spun with questions. Was this all a trap? Did Tabena know about Zuri's plan? Or was he caught off guard like everyone else? Then, for a brief moment, Tabena's gaze softened when he looked at Amorais. It was quick, but she saw something in his eyes, a promise that the truth would come out. He took a deep breath, looked at the guests, then back at Zuri. His silence wasn't fear, it was control. He was waiting for the right moment. Everyone thought he was speechless, but in reality he was preparing for something big, something that would soon turn this shocking moment completely upside down. Amorais stood frozen, her heart breaking with every whisper that filled the hall. The dream she had waited for all her life was turning into a nightmare in front of everyone she knew. Cameras kept flashing, guests kept staring, and every look felt like a knife cutting deeper. She tried to smile, tried to hold herself together, but inside, her world was falling apart. The man she loved stood silent, her cousin looked proud, and she felt completely alone. Her chest tightened as she fought back tears, not wanting anyone to see her pain. She couldn't understand how Zuri, her cousin, her once best friend, could do something so cruel. Memories of their childhood together flashed in her mind. The laughter, the secrets they shared, the promises to always stand by each other. All of it now felt like a lie. Amorai's eyes burned as she looked at Zuri, who avoided her gaze, pretending nothing was wrong. It wasn't just jealousy, it was betrayal of the deepest kind. The whispers in the hall grew louder, people speculating, pointing, taking pictures. Amorais wanted to disappear, to escape from the humiliation. But her feet refused to move. Her mother tried to step forward, but her father held her back, his face filled with anger and heartbreak. Amorai's hands trembled as she held her bouquet tighter, praying the ground would open and swallow her pain. She looked at Tabena, hoping he would say something, defend her, stop the shame, but his silence cut even deeper. The man who promised to protect her stood there watching, and that silence hurt more than Zuri's cruel smile. Amorai's mind filled with questions. Why was this happening? Did he know? Was she the only one who didn't see the truth until now? The air felt heavy with tension. Her lips quivered, but she stayed strong, refusing to cry in front of them. She knew tears would give Zuri satisfaction. Instead, she lifted her head slightly, even as her heart shattered. Inside, she made a silent promise. She would not let this be the end of her story. Something inside her shifted that moment. Beneath the pain, a quiet strength began to grow. A strength that would soon turn her humiliation into victory. Tabena slowly stepped forward, his face calm but serious. The noise in the hall was unbearable. People whispering, phones flashing, everyone trying to guess what was happening. Then, in a firm voice, he asked everyone to please remain seated. His tone carried power, and the hall fell silent instantly. Amorais looked at him with confusion, her heart racing, not knowing what he was about to say. Tabena took a deep breath, his eyes scanning the crowd before resting on Zuri, who looked suddenly uneasy. He said he had something to confess, something that had been hidden for days. A wave of shock moved through the guests. Amorai's hands trembled as she stared at him, unsure whether to feel fear or relief. Tabena's voice was steady as he explained that this wedding almost never happened, because someone tried to stop it. Gasps echoed around the room. People leaned forward, eager to hear more. Zuri shifted uncomfortably, her smile fading as her confidence began to crack. Tabena continued, revealing that a few days before the ceremony, he received a threatening message from someone who didn't want him to marry Amorais. He paused, letting the suspense fill the air. Then he looked directly at Zuri, and everyone's eyes followed. The hall went completely silent. Amorai's breath caught in her throat. Zuri tried to look away, but Tabena didn't let her escape the truth. He told the crowd that Zuri had come to him, pretending to care about Amorais but demanding he cancel the wedding. She had warned him that if he didn't obey, she would spread lies that could destroy his reputation and hurt Amorais' family name. The guests gasped loudly. Disbelief filled every corner of the room. Amorais felt tears in her eyes, not from sadness this time but from shock that Zuri's face turned pale, her fake confidence melting away. She tried to speak, but Tabena raised his hand, stopping her. He said he had proof, messages, videos, and documents that showed everything. The guests couldn't believe what they were hearing. The same woman who walked and dressed like a bride had come to destroy another's happiness. Tabena's words turned the entire mood of the room. Amorais finally felt the truth unfolding, and the pain she carried began to turn into quiet strength. The hall grew tense as Tabena's voice echoed through the microphone. Everyone leaned closer, waiting to hear what he would say next. He looked straight at Zuri, his expression calm but filled with disappointment. Then, in front of everyone, he revealed the truth. Zuri had tried to blackmail him just days before the wedding. A wave of shock ran through the guests. Gasps filled the room, and whispers spread like wildfire. Amorais stood frozen, her heart pounding as she tried to process what she just heard. Tabena explained that Zuri had called him secretly, demanding he cancel the wedding and leave Amorais. She told him that if he didn't do as she said, she would ruin his name and expose fake stories that could destroy Amorais' family. The audience couldn't believe their ears. People who once admired Zuri now stared at her with disbelief and anger. Zuri tried to smile and shake her head, pretending it was a lie, but her trembling hands betrayed her. Amorais' mother covered her mouth in shock, while her father looked ready to confront Zuri. Tabena went on, explaining how he had recorded their conversation as proof. He wanted to protect Amorais and show everyone who the real enemy was. Zuri's face turned pale as he described every detail, how she had begged, threatened, and even cried to convince him to break off the wedding. The guests began murmuring, Their earlier sympathy for Zuri turning into disgust. Amarais felt both pain and relief. The betrayal was deeper than she imagined. But the truth finally coming out gave her strength. She looked at Zuri, no longer with sadness but with quiet power. Zuri tried to interrupt, shouting that he was lying, but Tebena remained calm. He said he had all the messages saved, and that everyone would soon see the evidence. The hall buzzed with tension. People took out their phones, trying to capture every second of the drama unfolding before them. Amarais' hands trembled, but her tears this time were not of shame. They were of justice. The truth was finally revealed. The cousin who once tried to destroy her happiness had exposed herself before the entire world. What began as a humiliation was now turning into a powerful moment of truth. Tebena reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone, his face calm but serious. Everyone watched closely, waiting for what he would do next. The air inside the hall felt heavy, and even the music had stopped. With one click, a video started playing on the big screen behind him. The crowd gasped as Zuri's voice filled the room. It was a secret recording, her laughing and admitting that she forged documents to claim ownership of Amarais' late father's company. Gasps turned into murmurs as people began whispering in disbelief. Zuri's confident smile disappeared instantly. In the video, Zuri bragged about how no one would find out, saying that if Tebena married Amarais, she would lose her chance to control the family business. Amarais stood frozen, tears welling in her eyes as she heard every word. The betrayal cut deep. This wasn't just jealousy or revenge, it was greed. Zuri had gone beyond humiliation. She had tried to steal what belonged to her family. Tebena paused the video, and then lifted a brown envelope, pulling out a set of official-looking papers. He handed them to the lawyer seated among the guests, who stood up and confirmed they were forged property transfer documents in Zuri's name. The entire hall erupted in shock. Phones flashed, guests gasped, and whispers grew louder. Zuri shook her head frantically, denying everything, but the evidence was undeniable. Her lies had finally caught up with her. Amarais' parents exchanged emotional glances. The truth was painful but freeing. Her father clenched his jaw, angry that someone they once treated like family had tried to cheat them. Amarais' mother wept silently, holding her daughter's hand tightly. Zuri tried to run toward the screen to stop the video, but security blocked her path. Her voice trembled as she begged Tebena to stop, but he stood firm, saying everyone deserved to know the truth. The hall buzzed louder with every second as Zuri's fake image fell apart before the crowd. Amarais looked at Tebena, her eyes filled with gratitude and disbelief. The man who had stayed silent now stood strong beside her, defending her honor. The truth was finally out. Zuri's evil plan had been destroyed by the very people she tried to deceive. What she meant for shame turned into Amarais' moment of victory. Zuri stood frozen as the video ended, her face pale and her body shaking. The entire hall stared at her in silence. The truth was out, and there was no more pretending. Murmurs filled the room as guests turned to each other, realizing that everything had been a lie. Zuri's confidence disappeared, replaced by panic and regret. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. Her legs gave way, and she collapsed to the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. The once proud woman who walked in trying to steal the spotlight now sat on the cold ground, surrounded by judgmental eyes. Amarais watched quietly, her heart heavy but calm. She never imagined that her own cousin would fall so low. The guests who had once admired Zuri were now whispering about her greed and deceit. Some shook their heads, others recorded the moment, while a few felt pity. But no one could defend her anymore. Her lies, her jealousy, and her cruelty had finally destroyed her. Zuri cried out, begging for forgiveness, saying she didn't mean for things to go this far. Her voice broke with guilt as she reached out toward Amarais, but Amarais didn't move. Tebena stood protectively beside his bride, his expression serious and firm. Amarais' parents looked on, their faces filled with disappointment, but also relief that the truth had come to light. The room was still tense when Tebena took Amarais' hand and looked around at the stunned guests. His voice was calm but full of pride as he said he had one last thing to share before ending the ceremony. Everyone leaned forward, wondering what more could happen after all the drama. Zuri wiped her tears silently, while Amarais stood quietly beside her groom, not knowing what he was about to say. Tebena smiled softly and announced that he and Amarais had kept a secret, a surprise that no one, not even their families, knew about. The hall buzzed with curiosity. Then he revealed that a week before the wedding, they had bought a beautiful new home together, and it was registered completely in Amari's name. Gasps echoed through the hall as everyone reacted to the unexpected news. Amari's covered her mouth in shock, her eyes wide with disbelief. Tabena turned to her and said this was his way of honoring her strength, trust, and love. He wanted her to know that no one could ever take away what truly belonged to her. The guests broke into applause, some even standing as tears filled their eyes. What started as a humiliating day had turned into a powerful moment of victory. The same people who once whispered in pity were now cheering for her. Zuri lowered her head in silence, realizing that her plan to destroy Amari's had completely failed. Amari's felt overwhelmed as Tabena lifted her hand high, declaring her not just his bride but his partner in every sense. The atmosphere changed instantly, laughter and happiness returned. The priest smiled and continued the ceremony, this time with more emotion than before. Everyone could see that love had won over lies. As the music began again and guests clapped joyfully, Amari's eyes filled with grateful tears. The same crowd that had once witnessed her pain was now watching her rise stronger than ever. Tabena kissed her hand gently, whispering that this was just the beginning of their story. The hall filled with cheers, cameras flashing, and music playing once more. But this time, the story was no longer about shame. It was about power, truth, and love that conquered everything. Hi, besties 2 hearts, thank you so much for watching till the end. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more heart-touching stories. Bye. Cherry Blossom.